Hi everyone, this is my second video that I'm making on the COVID-19 pandemic for 2020. We are now seeing second waves of this virus hitting many countries across the world, and the infection rate is way higher than it's ever been. We also have new strains of this virus in the UK as well as here where I am based in South Africa. Things are really starting to get out of hand with hospitals are now full and things are, for lack of a better word, starting to get really crazy. But the good news is that we do apparently have a vaccine and everyone is waiting to get their hands on it. The question is, when will we get it and can we actually rely on this? And possibly the most important question is there anything else that we can do to support our well being and our own health? Can we take our health into our own hands and do what we can do to keep ourselves safe? Well, this is precisely what this video is actually about. Now, I want to talk about the role of vitamins D3, C, as well as the trace element zinc in relation to the SARS coronavirus 2. Many doctors or scientists or people are just sharing, please take vitamins D3, take vitamin C, take zinc, because it's going to boost your immune system or it's going to help you fight this coronavirus. But have you ever stopped to ask yourself why and how do these vitamins and elements actually work? Well, this is exactly what I want to share with you today in layman's terms, in using reference to scientific papers. Now, let's talk very quickly about the vaccines. Here in South Africa, we know that our President Cyril Ramaphosa, has announced that about 10% of the population will be vaccinated sometime early next year. Now, what does early next year mean? It's not exactly a date or a time. So we're going to assume by sometime April that about 10% of this country will be vaccinated. Let's assume that 10% is vaccinated every 4 months. That means if all goes according to plan, we're going to have about 25 to 30% of South African vaccinated sometime in 2021. Now, what about worldwide? We know that the two biggest manufacturers of this vaccine is actually Pfizer and Moderna. And these two companies have said that they will actually produce about 1 billion each of these doses in the new year 2021. Now, you must understand that both of these companies have made a vaccine that required 2 doses. So even though you have 2 billion doses, doesn't mean that we can vaccinate 2 billion people. It means that those 2 billion doses can only go to 1 billion people. In other words, about 12.5% of the world's population can possibly be vaccinated by the end of 2021. Well, what about the other 87.5%? What's going to happen to them? Are they going to remain not vaccinated? Are they going to remain prone to actually being infected to the SARS coronavirus 2? Maybe, if things go really well, we're going to have other companies come in to help to manufacture this vaccine. I don't know. But I want to talk about what we can do in the meantime, because we can't just sit on our behind waiting for someone or something to save us. We have to do something about it. Now, let's use this analogy. There are two ways to keep yourself protected from a thief entering your home. The first is you get some kind of weapon. So in this case, we have the example of a baseball bat. And you can use your baseball bat to protect yourself from harm from this thief. So the thief in our analogy is, of course, the virus. And the baseball bat in this case is our weapon, which can be the vaccine or some kind of cure. Now, that's one way in which you can keep yourself safe. The other way that you can keep yourself safe is that, or in your home from the thief, is if you put up burglar guards or you get in top-notch security, right? A really good alarm system. Now, this will help you to prevent yourself harm from the thief. In other words, before the thief can do harm to you, before the thief can rob you, you can prevent yourself from being infected by the virus in this case. So the security that I'm talking about here is either food or vitamins or minerals or any other kind of natural resources or method that we can use to keep ourselves safe from this virus by boosting our immune system, because that's really our defense system. Now, the information that I'm going to be sharing with you about zinc come from the YouTube channel by Dr. John Campbell, who makes use or makes reference to this peer-reviewed scientific paper, the links of which you'll either find either above or below this video. All the links that I share with you today will be found somewhere above or below this video. Now let's talk about zinc. Zinc is known as an immunoregulator. What is an immunoregulator? When your body is infected with some kind of pathogen, a pathogen is a disease-causing organism. It supports your body in responding effectively to that infection or to that pathogen. The zinc also helps your body in bringing down inflammation in your body, because the moment you have an immune response, your body becomes inflamed because this is part of that immune response. Zinc also promotes immunological memory. In other words, it helps your fighter cells to remember what this bad guy is. So the next time it sees it, it knows how to strategize and attack on this pathogen or this virus or this bacteria. Now, most importantly, zinc has antiviral properties. So what does that mean? It means that it stops the virus from replicating. Now, how do viruses actually replicate in your body? So this is what happens. You see, human beings have something called a DNA, which is a deoxyribonucleic acid. We have a double strand of DNA in our body. Viruses, or the viruses that I have come to study anyway, only have an RNA, which means they have a single strand. Now, this RNA or the DNA in our body has the code for everything that we are. It is a blueprint for us. So the RNA contains the blueprint of this virus. And now what's happening is that the virus is actually coming in and it's docking onto the cell wall, and it's injecting its gut, its contents, everything that's on the inside into your cell. Now that everything that I'm talking about is the RNA. It's the blueprint of this virus. It contains everything to make more copies of it. Once this RNA enters your cell, as we can see in this example here with the HIV virus, the virus comes in, it docks into your cell, it releases its RNA into your cell, and then the RNA makes use of some of the organelles in your cell, specifically something called ribosomes. Think about ribosomes like photocopying machines in your cell. What happens is that it starts to make more and more copies of this RNA. It starts to make more and more copies of the blueprint of this virus. The next step of this is that what happens is that it uses other parts of your cell to start making parts of the virus. So think about this. Imagine the virus like a car. So the blueprint of the car goes into your cell, and then your cell makes wheels, it makes doors, it makes the steering wheel, it makes the gearbox, it makes the seat, it makes the sunroof, it makes everything required for the car. Then the car is assembled in your cell. This is what happens. the blueprint for the virus is used to make different parts of the virus. This virus is then assembled. Once it is assembled, and there are hundreds and thousands, if not millions, of these viruses that are made, what happens is that it leaves the cell. And it doesn't leave the cell in a peaceful way. It does it in a very violent way, which results in the death of the cell in most cases, or the rupture of the cell. The cell completely breaks up. The moment this happens is when you have an immune response, and that's the moment that you start to have inflammation in your body. These viruses, of course, then go and infect other cells, replicating itself further. What's happening is that when you take the zinc, it is stopping the copying of the RNA. So you're not having replication, because if you don't have copies of the RNA made, if you don't have blueprint of the virus, you can't manufacture more parts of the virus. If you don't manufacture more parts of the virus, you don't have an increased viral load. If you don't have an increased viral load, of course, you're going to have little to no symptoms, or you may even test as COVID-19 negative. So that is what is happening here. Now, this study also found that zinc deficient COVID patients developed more complications. 70.4% of specifically COVID patients that were zinc deficient developed more complications compared to 30% of people that were non-zinc deficient. And in the study, statistically, we have a p-value of 0.009, which is highly significant, which means that the chances of us seeing these numbers happen randomly are very low. The study also found that people that had lower zinc levels had an increase in acute respiratory distress syndrome. We know that the SARS coronavirus 2 attacks the lungs, right? And why does it actually attack the lungs? Because it likes the epithelial cells. And where do you find most of the epithelial cells, the big buffet of epithelial cells? Well, it's found in your lungs. That's why it's going to your lungs, because that's what it loves to eat, right? Eat. So what's happening is that we are seeing an increase in acute respiratory distress syndrome. We're also finding that patients are requiring a more need for steroids. Why steroids? Because steroids support the body in bringing the inflammation down. And of course, lastly, we're seeing an increase in mortality. Mortality meaning, sadly, more people dying because of lower zinc levels. We also know that people that were zinc deficient stayed longer in hospitals. On average of 7.9 days compared to people that were non-zinc deficient who stayed in hospital for an average of 5.7 days. Again, statistically, a p-value of 0.048, again, highly significant. There were also some in vitro studies done. Now, what is vitro? Vitro means in a glass tube or in a test tube. That means this was done inside a laboratory. And it was found in the study that reduced zinc levels increase the SARS coronavirus 2 receptor interactions, and increased zinc levels inhibit the ACE2 expression. Now, what does this mean? Of course, if you haven't studied virology or immunology, you have no idea what this actually means. But let me call your attention to this image here. You see, how does a virus actually enter your cell? Now, your cell has a cell wall which is known to be semi-permeable. That term semi-permeable means that it allows certain things or substances to come in and certain things or substances to leave, right? It is semi-permeable. It is able to open and close. Now, to get in to a cell, you need a key. Somehow, magically, The virus has a key. It is able to trick the cell into thinking, hey, look, I have something good to offer you, let me in. And the cell just responds and opens up. So you're having this docking that happens. And when we have this virus come in and docks, we have the cell wall open up and release, and then the cell can actually, this virus can release its contents, the RNA, into the cell. And that is how it's going to replicate itself. The entire virus doesn't go into the cell. It just opens up the cell wall to release the RNA, which is the blueprint, so that it can replicate itself and then leave the cell. What we are seeing is that with people that have low zinc levels, we're having more and more of these dockings taking place. Whereas people that have an increase of zinc in their system, we're not seeing so much of these ACE2 expressions. We are not seeing this lock and key action taking place as many times if you have zinc, a high level of zinc in your system. So if the virus cannot dock, it cannot inject its RNA, which means it cannot make copies of its RNA, which means it cannot make more parts, which means that it cannot survive in your system. So just to summarize here, the zinc is actually stopping the viral RNA from actually replicating. Secondly, you are stopping, or you are bringing down, you are decreasing the number of interactions of the virus on your cell wall. Thirdly, we are bringing down the number of days that you spend in hospital. And fourth, you are minimizing the number of complications that you would get from being infected with this virus. And all of this from simply just taking the trace element zinc. A few benefits of zinc, which I found from this website. Again, links above or below this video. It plays a role in the immune function. It supports in wound healing, DNA synthesis, cell division, normal growth and development. And this is rather an interesting one. It's required for a sense of taste and smell. And many people that have tested positive for the SARS coronavirus 2 have reported that they have lost their sense of taste and smell. Now, zinc and immunity. We know that severe zinc deficiency depresses immune function. We know that even mild to moderate degrees of zinc deficiency can impair macrophage and neutrophil function. What are macrophage and neutrophils? They're simply white blood cells. Macrophages will either eat up pathogens. Pathogens, again, are those disease-causing bacteria or organisms that enter your body. So the macrophage will either eat up these pathogens, or it might even eat up the infected cells. The body requires zinc to develop and activate T lymphocytes. Now, these T lymphocytes are the memory white blood cells that are responsible for remembering how to fight the virus. We know that low zinc levels have shown reduced lymphocyte proliferation. Now, again, lymphocytes are another type of white blood cells that are part of the immune system, and low zinc levels mean we don't have enough production of these specialized white blood cells, the lymphocytes. And finally, low zinc levels have been associated with increased susceptibility to pneumonia and other infections, according to the study. But I do want to point out that according to the study, they made reference to this final point specifically to children and specifically in third world countries. Now, the next bit on vitamin D that I'm going to be sharing with you comes from this peer-reviewed scientific paper. Again, links above or below this video. Vitamin D. Now, which one should you be getting? Well, the one that you should be looking out for in the drugstores or the pharmacies is something called vitamin D3. Now, you can get this vitamin naturally from the sun by spending time in the sun. Unfortunately, more and more people are spending time indoors and not as much time out in the sun, which is why we're having a lot of people develop osteoporosis or arthritis or very brittle and weak bones. And it's also been found that a deficiency in vitamin D3 results in more and more people developing symptoms of depression. It's so important that you get yourself checked to see that if you are actually deficient in vitamin D3. Now, what happens when you naturally get this vitamin or you take vitamin D3? You see, your body takes this vitamin D3 and it creates this compound known as CAMPS. CAMPS is an acronym for this, which I'm not going to say because I know that I'm going to completely butcher it, but know that it creates this compound called CAMPS. And CAMPS act as missiles. They act as missiles and they blow up certain kinds of viruses and bacteria and fungi. Let's look at this image here. Here we have some CAMPS. Here we see a pathogen, in this case a bacteria. Now the red shapes that you see here represent the CAMPS. What they do is that they attach to the cell wall of the pathogen. In this case, we have a bacteria because we can see a lipid cell wall. It starts to disrupt and disintegrate the bacteria, the virus, or the fungi until it completely dissolves, rendering it harmless. So that's vitamin D, and that is why it's so important that you take vitamin D, because vitamin D has the potential to actually break up the cell wall, disrupt the cell wall, so that the virus becomes harmless in your system. Now, I'm not going to be making any reference to any scientific paper on vitamin C. And the reason is because you don't need any convincing to take vitamin C. You've been told this for years and years and years that if you have the flu, that you should take vitamin C to boost your immune system. But I want to share with you why we should take vitamin C. Vitamin C is known as one of the greatest antioxidants. And an oxidant, think about an oxidant as rust in your body. So your cells become rusty. How do they become rusty? Well, our cells become rusty because of stress, because of the food we eat, and because of the air that we are breathing out, the external environment that we place our bodies in. That results in our cells becoming damaged. Now, vitamin C, which is an antioxidant, actually reverses the damage of the oxidation that takes place in our bodies. Vitamin C is also known to be anti-inflammatory. Do you know that you do not get sick because of the SARS coronavirus 2? That is actually not what's making you sick. Do you know what's making you sick? What's making you sick is your body's response to the virus. You see, because your body has now gotten infected, your body responds by creating what is called this cytokine storm, which is, in layman's term, a very overreactive, crazy immune response. And when this happens, your body becomes inflamed. And this inflammation is your body's way of trying to save you from dying. But unfortunately, that reaction has a negative effect on our body. This is why when you get infected, you actually get a fever. Your body is trying to create heat in your body so to kill off this virus, right? But unfortunately, it can have a reverse effect of what we want to happen, and in some cases, even fatal. So the vitamin C has to bring down that inflammation in your body. It helps to reverse the damage of the cells in your body. And also the vitamin C has an antiviral effect on your system. As I shared, antiviral means it stops the viral replication. Now, when you are getting vitamin C, I would advise that you get the powdered form and also make sure that you get a buffered form of vitamin C. Why? Because it is so difficult to get true vitamin C. The only vitamin C that you can get out there now is in the form of ascorbic acid. Now, it's an acid, and therefore it needs to be balanced with some kind of alkaline so that it sits well in your tummy. And the way you do it is by adding alkaline powder or something known as baking soda. So you can add a quarter to half teaspoon of the alkaline powder or the baking soda to your powdered vitamin C, even if it is buffered, because there are many vitamin C powders that claim to be buffered, but they are still highly acidic. So you don't really want to be putting this acid into your system, because when your blood is actually acidic, that is when pathogens actually strive. Now, this is so important. Everything that I've shared with you about vitamin C, vitamin D3, and zinc, please understand that these vitamins will not cure you or prevent you from developing symptoms of COVID-19. But it may help you recover faster. It may support you in experiencing little to no symptoms. It's so important that you take responsibility for your own health and do what you can to take care of yourself. In the meantime, remember to keep your distance socially. Sanitize and wash your hand as much as possible and wear your mask. Yes, the masks are not 100% effective. In fact, I don't even think they are 40% effective. But if your masks are 10% effective, I rather take that 10% and keep myself safe for that 10% rather than have no protection at all. So wash your hands, wear your mask, and keep your distance. Now, this is so important. I am not a medical doctor, I'm not a medical practitioner. I am a medical microbiology technician. I have studied virology, immunology, and microbiology at university, but I'm not practicing. I am simply sharing with you or providing you information and so to support you in your well-being by my interpretation of the scientific literature. Do your own research, consult with your doctor, read up information on the World Health Organization's website, work with your local medical authorities for any up-to-date information on the pandemic. Please take care of yourself and stay safe. And if you found this information valuable, please share it with people that you know can help. And just do what you can to take care of yourself, because at the end of the day, we are really responsible for our own health and well-being. I hope I never have to make another video about COVID-19 again, and I will see some of you. I really want to see some of you alive and well and kicking in the new year.